Hi, Need for Speed fans. I'm Sean. I work on No Limits. You've probably seen me around Twitter or Reddit. I hope you're enjoying the utter madness of our Madballs update. And today, to chat with me about the Madballs integration, I've assembled a crack team of panelists who are Madballs experts. Joining me today, Carlos Villagra, head of creative at Cloudco Entertainment, Ben Daw, our creative director of brand and partnerships at Firemonkeys Studio, and joining us today, Dr. Rebecca McKendry, horror historian. So Madballs team, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah.
Awesome to be here.
Awesome. So Halloween, one of my favorite holidays of all time, and us doing this Madballs integration with Need for Speed No Limits, super awesome. Carlos, I want to start with you. So, what is your involvement with this collaboration and your history with Madballs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently the head of creative for Cloudco Entertainment. So one of our brands is Madballs, amongst a few others. And I've been with the team in different roles for close to 14 years now. So it's been great. I wasn't that aware of it. I clearly remember it from when I was a little kid, and it was definitely a blast from the past seeing it. And, I've been lucky enough to work with some amazing creatives that always have had a passion for the brand. So I feel like it's my duty to sort of carry that on.
Yeah, and I see behind you, and before we move on, you've got these giant Madballs heads, which is amazing. Would you mind trying one on for us?
This is my favorite, actually.
Were those from anything in particular?
So is there like Dr. McKendry said, is there a why do you have those? Do you guys do like Madballs parades?
Yeah, so Madballs is such a fun brand to work on. We made these. We had a toy line out in retail, and we made it to sort of create promotional videos that were kind of campy, lowbrow kind of thing. So we had them do skits. We had them do all kinds of things, like they'll play music, be in a band, things of that nature. If you go to our Instagram account, I think you can see a lot of them. And we also have a YouTube channel if anyone's interested to see us play around and go crazy in these masks.
That's amazing. I think we need some of those here at the Firemonkeys when we're back in the studio.
They're easy to make. It's just paper mache. If anyone's artistic over there.
Yeah, you should do like a how-to video, how to create your own Madball head. That'd be amazing.
Exactly. There you go.
I'm going to move over to Dr. McKendry, Rebecca. So you've got a long history with Madballs. Can you give us some of your backstory with the franchise and how you got into it?
Yeah, so Madballs hit me at this perfect point where I was a kid. I was probably about 6-7 years old when Madballs really started coming onto the market. And for me as a monster kid, I always just gravitated towards weird toys, weird media. I was the Scooby-Doo type of kid. And I wanted monsters and I wanted gross out stuff. And so I remember Garbage Pail Kids kind of hitting the scene first, probably when I was in about first or second grade, and I had every single one. And then actually, and it's weird to say that I've become kind of like a weird expert on these things. Boglins came along really shortly thereafter. And I remember this being in conjunction with this movie Ghoulies, and we were seeing these little critter craze in movies. So we were seeing Ghoulies and Critters, Gremlins definitely qualifies to a degree. And then there was this massive boom in kind of gross out creepy toys that happened right around the mid 80s, right after we saw kind of the Boglins and the Garbage Pail Kids hit. And immediately it was Monster in My Pocket and My Pet Monster and, of course, Madballs. And Madballs became, and I remember Germs, there was a whole bunch of them, but Madballs became sacred to me. He just held up one of my very first ones that I ever had, which was Slobulus. I always So I remember for Christmas, I had asked my parents to get me a Madball. And I wanted Oculus, who I later purchased, Oculus Orbis. And my parents got me Slobulus, and I was so like, but I wanted the eyeball. Still loved him. But that's how you are when you're a kid and you're collecting this stuff. You're very particular about it. These things, I loved them so much because for me, it was like a multi-purpose toy. Like we would throw them around the yard, but I also remember every Halloween and this is like my 7-year-old version, I would make a haunted house on my parents' carport and I would invite all my friends over. And I remember having them hanging from fishing line, like all over the haunted house. And then I got so upset because I finally got the Oculus, not this one. But I got one and one of my neighborhood friends threw it in my parents' pool and it was in there for like 3 hours. And I went back to get it and like the chlorine in the sun had completely bleached it. And I remember being so pissed off. But as like a monster kid in the 1980s, before I ever even really, was mature enough to identify myself as a horror fan or think about why I was gravitating towards darker media, these were my answer. These were the things that I was finding, kind of some fun in that I was like, it's gross, but it's fun. And that was what I loved about, and still think was so smart about Madballs is none of them really crossed the line to the point where they became controversial. Mm-hmm. But as a second grader, you feel like you're doing something really transgressive by holding a skull. Like there's something really wild about it. None of them were bloody. None of them were that intense. It was all kind of more slime or very monster based or a screaming baseball. But that it still felt really transgressive for me as a kid.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's so funny that you bring up like Ghoulies and Boglins. I had a Boglin toy and, we used to have a little terrier dog and I would take that and just torment her with it. And she eventually like just destroyed it, which was awesome. But, I actually just watched.
I think I probably had 4 of them, 4 or 5. I had like a fish one and a snake one. This is all that's left. The rest of them did not live through my parents' attic, which is like itself its own like little heated torture chamber. But this one somehow survived. So this guy stays with me always now.
That is, I'm pretty sure that's the one we had actually.
Was there ever a Boglins cartoon? I have actually never heard of Boglins. Maybe they didn't come to Australia.
So I actually wrote a very big article on Boglins a couple of years ago. And even like some of the original designers on Boglins sent me some of the designs for Boglins that never got released, which was crazy because I was like, I'm looking at history that like me and 5 other people really appreciate. But it was still amazing to see. They experimented with a couple of different other versions of it, but it did not have the legs. Like Madballs obviously went into a cartoon form, and I have really fond memories of the Madballs direct-to-video hits. Boglins never had legs like that.
Yeah, I think that era in the 80s when Madballs kind of came out and all the things you kind of mentioned, it was really such a golden age of that kind of not gory but kind of gross out, creepy, little creatures and critters and stuff. And I think, it's awesome to see that it's, of all those things that kind of came out, Madballs has kind of transcended and it's still going strong. And like, I know, just this past July, like to align with Comic-Con, they, Carlos, you guys announced, your integration with Megalopolis Toys, and bringing some of the Madballs characters back to life, which is, it shows that the franchise has legs.
For sure. And I love just going back. I love hearing stories. They're so relatable too, especially with people around the same generation. Because I strictly remember being again like 6 or 7, and in the neighborhood with the neighbor kids, and being like dark. Everyone's about to go home. Just being like crowded around, like looking at our Garbage Pail Kids and our Madballs, feeling like we were getting away with something. Like our parents were gonna be all mad if they saw this with us. But it was cool, and like Rebecca's saying, like GPK definitely pushed it to the max, and Madballs not so much. But again, it was one of those things that back in the 80s, if you're a parent, you probably didn't want your 5-year-old running around with a decapitated Frankenstein monster, but,
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. Like, I think Madballs couldn't exist. Like, they couldn't be born now because, toys are pretty safe. And it's definitely like a product of its time. Like, it was so cool. And I was never allowed to have Madballs. I had very peace-loving parents who would take away all the plastic guns from my toys, but I used to see them. They were the forbidden fruit on the toy shelf that would speak to me. They're very cool.
Yeah.
And Ben, you kind of helped. You really, on the Firemonkey side, you helped bring this integration to life. Like, so it was kind of a passion project for you in a way.
Yeah, like I'm responsible for bringing all the kind of partnerships to life in the studio, and with Need for Speed No Limits, we've worked with Snoop Dogg and Lil Wayne and Steve Aoki, and we've done a lot of streetwear stuff. But a few years ago, we introduced Halloween updates because we're really passionate about Halloween, and we got really creative. So this was an opportunity to kind of bring in a partnership and merge it with Halloween. And I think, there's this great connection between horror and cars. And, the real big inspiration here was like looking at Ratfink. Ratfink is this kind of rat rod, green rat character who's kind of gross. And I think there's definitely a kinship with Madballs. So I think it really came together nicely. And I'd never seen Madballs used in this way before as well. So I think it's really introducing Madballs, to a new generation, but doing something really fresh and different with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think, we're actually, to be transparent, we're recording this right before the update goes live. So, I know you guys have kind of seen the artwork and stuff, but like, Rebecca, for you, like, how does that, like, you kind of grew up with it and stuff, and then now seeing it, on these cars as wraps, and it's like such a cool street, kind of thing. Like, how does that feel?
It was awesome to be able to check out the wraps. I think that the designers did this amazing job of really embodying what Madballs was. It's really easy to kind of just go like, oh, okay, they're like zombie heads. Like put some gashes and some blood. And Madballs were never really designed like that. They definitely kind of had their own aesthetic. They had their own style. They had their own color palette, and it's very specific. And so to be able to kind of look at them and establish that and translate it into kind of how a car is painted was really impressive. The fact that they weren't blood, that it was slime, that it was scales, that it was purple monsters with, slits in them, that it felt kind of Frankenstein-y. That again, it feels creepy and it feels gross out, but at no point does it feel horror. It was really smart.
Yeah, and Carlos, obviously you've been along this journey with us, like from the beginning. How is it like? You work in that world and stuff, and then to kind of see our artists, on the game side, kind of translate what you guys have done, into more of like a street racing style.
Yeah, I think it starts, like you were saying, with Ben, and him having such a knowledge of the brand and the entire Firemonkey team. For sure, you could tell they sort of take the lead. From our perspective, what blows me away is that being the brand owners, we feel like we've almost seen everything.
Yeah.
But it's always the best feeling when you collaborate and someone else could take something to a place where, it's unexpected, it's surprising, but still like super cool, and it still fits. Like, that's where it feels like it all comes together, and it really feels amazing in that sense.
Yeah, and I think, Ben, like you mentioned, we've done all these partnerships. We're always kind of finding new ways to do it. Like, how do you kind of look at a brand like Madballs and say, yeah, this is going to work. This is going to happen in Need for Speed No Limits?
I think partially, brand partnerships can, often driven by money, but we really look at them as driven by what we're passionate about, and then trying to, make our players passionate about it through our passion for the IP. And Madballs is definitely one of those things that when we pitched it internally, people kind of raised eyebrows and didn't really know what it was, but we were like, trust us, and I think now coming out the other side, everyone's like, wow, Madballs, so it's working on this stuff is really selling an idea and asking for a lot of faith from a lot of different people on different levels. But, we've got a pretty solid track record in that space, and I'm so happy with the way it turned out. And I think it actually turned out even better than I imagined it to, which, it was really exciting.
Yeah, I know. We started kind of working on this like pre-lockdown, and for those of you following at home, we Ben and I are in Melbourne. We're actually still currently in lockdown, and we've been for a long time. So we had to do this all remotely. Obviously, Carlos is over in America. We're in Australia. We're trying to juggle this, and I think the team really did knock it out of the park. It's amazing what they were able to translate it to.
Yeah. And
I still want them to, like, when they hit like fourth gear, I want them to like fart or something,
We tried, but the audio designer looked
maybe for the next update.
Yeah.
No, I was really excited to see this because I think this definitely is going to hit a couple of different audience types. I think for people of an older generation, there is something so nostalgic about this. There is something so that it feels like it takes you back. And then for younger generations, it's obviously, finding some new kitsch, finding, this weird brand that you'd never heard of before. A couple of years ago, this amazing horror t-shirt company, Fright Rags, did a line of Madballs shirts, which I bought like 4 of. And I loved wearing those to like Target in the grocery store, because I would get stopped by people in their like 30s through 50s who would just point and go, Madballs, had all of them. And it was just so great to kind of see this spark on people's faces when they realized what they were and something that they had, found to be so charming and transgressive from their youth. So I'm excited for a whole new generation to find that as well.
Yeah, it is almost kind of like a secret language, and I think what the beauty of Madballs is, and with the integration we kind of did with Need for Speed No Limits, is just that a lot of the people, obviously that work on the game are Australian, and they're younger, so they weren't like as immersed, in Madballs as I think those of us in America. Aside from Ben, obviously, who's a weird outlier in the Australian horror pop culture space. But a lot of these designers, they really didn't have a whole lot of history with it. I think our producer Justin, he knew Madballs and stuff, and we were pitching it to the design team and everything. They're kind of like, yeah, okay, all right. And as Ben said, it was a kind of a leap of faith, and Ben saying, no, it's going to work. And then taking it and doing all this stuff with it. So it translates really in an interesting space where, you don't have to be familiar with Madballs. You can just look at this and say, oh my God, that's really cool. That's amazing.
And Madballs, they released them in other countries as well. And I was always so jealous once I found out about it, because there was Madballs UK, and they were completely different than the ones that we had stateside. A lot of them were animal themed, and they had like an anglerfish and like this cat dog thing, and there was a dragon. And then they did them in Italy, but they were big. And I was, every single time I would see those come up on eBay, I'd be like, oh, I want one of those, like the big Italian ones. But yeah, so it translates culturally as well. I mean, just the kind of gross out head, it went across borders.
Yeah. So Carlos, do you have like a crazy collection of just like Madballs International stuff?
You have the Italian ones.
Yeah, I feel lucky enough in a way to be part of the history, because I distinctly remember working on that and being 81 brand new Madball designs just for that territory, and it was blowing out, et cetera. So it was just so much fun. Back then, a couple of the original designers from the 80s were still part of the company, and just to see them work and it was such a family back then that I feel like, I'm kind of carrying that legacy for them, and having been, around them and part of them and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, we kind of have the whole collection in the vault, and it's just very interesting how it sort of, what dynamic it has between the fans and us in a way. They almost know more than we do.
I want to see some vault videos, Carlos. That's it. Vault videos. You should crack open the Madballs vault and do some spotlight videos.
Maybe we could do a giveaway, and we'll give away one of the original prototypes or something.
Ooh. I want to see, because it's been so long, I want a re-release of the Madballs. It was one of the videos that you guys did, but it was they did a variety show. Where they had all these little skits that they did. I just remember that really well, where it was all these little song and dance numbers done by the Madballs. It was like the Madballs go vaudeville. I remember that one really well. But But there's a Care Bear behind you, and I got to say, the second Care Bears movie like melted my brain as a kid. So yeah, y'all made some creepy stuff. The Care Bears movie, I swear, it had this book of evil with a face in it that would like try to lure you in. It was nightmare fuel.
The original cartoon was dark.
Yeah, I watched it recently and it was terrifying.
Nicolas, I still have vivid memories of his name.
I remember my dad was a huge animation fan, and he would take us as we were kids. He'd just take us to anything animated, and we went and saw like the Care Bears movie, all that stuff. And I just remember, the Care Bears movie was super creepy.
Yeah, and the climax took place at this deserted carnival, and it was just wild. And then he got possessed by the book and became like evil, and that was some crazy stuff.
Yeah, and even back then, we would always, even now still, but we would like to cross over the two brands because it's so funny too. Like Care Bears is like the sweetest possible preschool thing ever, and Madballs is kind of just funky and funny. And it's always so when Marvel in the 80s was doing comics for Care Bears, I think the Madballs made an appearance. So I still have that comic somewhere here. It's just fun.
We've got Madballs in Need for Speed. We had Care Bears in Sims Free Play. So, Firemonkeys Studio, we can help facilitate that crossover.
I want to see Madballs. I absolutely want to see Madballs.
Madbears.
Madballs.
Oh man, you heard it here first.
There you go. It'll be interesting because I love the fandom of Madballs, and you'll see. I think now that you guys are part of that fandom in a way, they're a passionate bunch, and you'll forever be in their radar. They'll be like, when is the next one? Like, it's quite the dialogue we have with our fans. It's awesome.
That's true. And I guess Need for Speed No Limits now is in that kind of history, that pantheon of Madballs and everything, which is really great. I mean, for us to be part of that. And speaking of, so with this integration, we had like the creation of a new character, Trash and Pumpkin, who is awesome. Carlos, how were you involved with the creation of him?
Yeah, it ended up working out pretty amazingly. It's a design that we had that we hadn't had a chance to fully use, but we loved it, and we were looking for things. And in a way, it's kind of a weird dynamic because this thing kind of like really fit into place. So we sort of just ran with it. But what's beautiful too about it is that, together, in this collaboration, we took it even further. Adding like a backstory and all these things, but also working with this really cool toy company to bring this figure to life.
And Ben, I know like when we were pitching it to the game team and you had this idea and you had this whole thing about like the pumpkin and Halloween and everything. You're a huge champion of that.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that, this style Madball hadn't existed yet. And I think it fit the kind of partnership really well. And I kind of mentioned it, and then Carlos was like straight away is like, look, I've got this kind of design, and it's super exciting to be part of that, part of the lore of Madballs, and just, to be able to, take part in that process, because that character will be forever part of, the lineup of characters. And I think he's such an amazing looking character. And the figure that Megapolis has got coming out is incredible, and he looks really distinct, but super gross, and he kind of embodies everything that's wonderful about Halloween, so hopefully I hope like in years to come, every Halloween we get to see some Trash and Pumpkins on stoops and stuff.
Yeah, my daughter is
adding to the legacy of the brand. The 80s, they had this pop-up little bodies where, you put the head and, the head would pop off, etc. But it was very limited. It was very simple, but still super fun. And everyone still remembers and asks about them. But Megalopolis then took that concept and then really did some premium sculpts. But not only that, but they like fully articulated it and things like that. So now for them to take this character and put it in that sort of format, it's just going to be so cool because the original line is already went out for pre-sale. It's doing amazing, and it's just going to be part of that, and they'll just keep coming. So it's going to be around for a while.
And then even the like the story, within the game, like our game designers really knocked it out of the park. So the backstory is basically one of the characters in the game finds this doll. It possesses him. He kind of becomes Trash and Pumpkin. He starts like tearing up the streets of Blackridge and everything. And that's like such a fun horror trope. And Rebecca, like, for you, like seeing, something like that, the history of horror and like that kind of thing, like, can you give us a little backstory on that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, we love our scary dolls. I mean, that's how we roll in horror. Is it's always scary dolls and cursed objects. So that makes perfect sense. The idea of the pumpkin becoming a monster is something that we don't see as much as we should. Like, I think that, we lean at it. We kind of wink at it occasionally. We have our pumpkin head, but he's not really a pumpkin. But it's at the same time, it's something that's so iconic that we see everywhere. I mean, it's something that's so iconic. And it's something that most horror fans kind of embrace. We embrace that pumpkin. It's something that we celebrate year round. And so to be seeing him translate into a Madball is amazing. And I love so much that the designers incorporated the body, because that was something that was such like a wink to the diehard fans, because they did have those toys where you could put the head on, and they were so limited. I never owned one. It was always something that I looked at where I was like, oh, I want one of those. Those and the ones that the eyeballs burst. I never got one of those either, because they were such limited runs. But yeah, it was just like such a nice nod to the fan to include the full body, and so well done. He just feels so legit to Madballs. But again, something we've never seen in the Madball space before. With the Madballs, most of them looked at things that were already heads. It was like, it's the head of a skull, it's the head of a pig, it's the head of a cyclops. And so aside from a fist holding an eyeball, which was kind of the weird outlier, we didn't see a lot of non-head things. So I love that they were able to kind of expand into an inanimate object, except for the baseball. We've had a baseball.
Yeah, and as you guys are talking, I'm looking in the background, and Carlos obviously has his Madballs collection. Rebecca's got her like horror movie posters up and stuff. Ben's got all of his horrors. I've got like a kind of my reanimated dead fern. It's kind of back from the dead, and so super jealous. So then, in terms of like talking about like Need for Speed, No Limits, kind of being part of the now it's in that Madball space. Like I'm really curious, like, what is kind of the history of Madballs in pop culture? Because it was a toy, it was a comic book, it was an animated series, right? And now it's in a video game. Like, Carlos, what else was there? What are we looking for in the future?
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's almost going back to like that magical decade of the 80s, where in a way it was so simple, like things were so simple, and you had all this like flood of originality and things like that. So, not everything needed to be like this ginormous franchise. Like almost how a little bit feels like it is right now. But yeah, it was like a simple idea, that some passionate people really came up with. And it really doesn't have to be that much more than that. And what's cool about the brand that I love so much even now is that it kind of falls in that category of again, the Garbage Pail Kids and even Mad Magazine, where it almost becomes like this platform where we can all have fun, and it leaves room for people to tell different stories, and to people come up with their own idea of what Madballs is in a sense, because it's always going to have the same vibe, gross, fun, slapstick, all those things. But we love the idea that it's open. So we've kind of resisted like giving like the definitive origin, because almost anything could be a Madball. Like we could be a Madball, like I love doing caricatures of people as Madballs. It's almost like this platform, right?
I also think
and that's where like when we collaborate, it's not like, oh, but the pumpkin guy in season 3 did this and you can't do that, and that he only could do this, like we could just have fun.
I think there's like a punk rock element to Madballs. Like Madballs like punk rock for kids. And I think because of that very nature, it kind of seeps in. That's probably why if you had like this definitive, like linear mythology, it's not very punk rock. But I think the whole ethos kind of is that. It's kind of disruptive and unexpected. And yeah.
And there's definitely something about our adolescence that when you look back at the toys, you look back at them with a fondness. The same thing happens with movies, regardless of when your adolescent was, whether it was the 1960s, 1970s, 2000s, whatever movies you watch between age like 7 to 16, those become kind of sacred canon for you. And it's very much, it's what we consider to be the formative years. And you are reaching out into the world to look towards, you know, whatever's going on. You're looking for answers and ways to kind of self-identify. And during that time period, we do it a lot with movies, which is why 80s kids like me, we immediately go, oh, it's the Goonies. Oh, it's the Burbs. Things like that. And it happens with every generation. But for 80s kids like me, you know, and not even just 80s kids, but it happens with toys as well. And so for a very particular generation, Madballs was a way for us to kind of self-identify as we were rejecting kind of the more traditional toys. No, I'm not too into G.I. Joes. No, that's not my jam. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, not quite. But Madballs, Garbage Pail Kids, these more kind of transgressive, outlier, weird toys that feel like we're somehow, you know, like we're punk rock, like we're doing something bad, like we're fighting the norms of society. These became a way of self-identifying long before we ever really knew how to verbalize it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think you're right about that. Like, it was always kind of on the fringes, you know, as I was kind of growing up in middle America with, you kind of like, you just see a Madball here or there, you see some Garbage Pail Kids here and there. It's just kind of that kind of weird, you know, and even when you look at like, obviously the Madballs has had like all these different like iterations, which is so cool and gives it its own weird mythology. It's all kind of, you know, kind of a mishmash or whatever, which is perfect for Madballs, right? And then you even look at like Garbage Pail Kids. They had a movie which is really, really twisted and weird, you know. So
I was at a convention in Long Island, and Sean Astin was there signing for one of the Hobbit movies, and Mackenzie had come along just like for the hell of it. And as I was walking around, I was immediately like, oh, you're Mackenzie Astin. I love your Garbage Pail Kids. And I totally like lost it on him and went full fangirl. And I think he thought I was nuts. And then he like politely thanked me and I went on my day. But it was just so exciting for me. But yeah, most of these toys, you know, Barbie had an aisle. You could go down the Barbie aisle. It was all pink. It was there. There were a lot of shoes. But Madballs, you know, they were in they had like a little section. Garbage Pail Kids, you would have to find that like little box by the front checkout of like your local bodega. You know, these were not things that were taking over toy aisles, but it was like our underground indie rock before there was such a thing.
You know, it is like, you know, Ben said, and it always pops up, and it is kind of like a constant, not in this huge sort of take over the world billboard kind of way, like you're saying, Rebecca, but, you know, like Jeremy Scott, you know, thinking about this sort of punk rock thing, Jeremy Scott, who's a very sort of, you know, in fashion designer right now, a couple of years ago had a whole collection based on Madballs, which is the weirdest thing ever. So you see Jared Leto, you know, like wearing his clothes and all these other celebrities, and it's just random and wild and different. And they came out in Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but it was kind of like the last bomb that kind of took out the main bad guy. Yeah. And it was just like Dust Brain, the Madball just coming out, and he, again, just kind of like makes weird noises and explodes. And you know, it just works. Saturday Night Live, there's been a few skits with Madballs. We're constantly doing books and comics and things like that. So we kind of stay in a constant way with it.
Yeah, like I said, it's that kind of the secret handshake thing that's like this, you know, on the edge. And I think, you know, Need for Speed No Limits as you know, we've been around for a while. We've done these really interesting integrations and stuff. And the beauty of it, you know, when we do the Halloween stuff, you know, we basically say to, you know, the team when we're working together, I remember the first time we did a Halloween thing, it was like, hey, go as big and crazy as you want. Just make sure the genie is back in the bottle at the end, you know? Having said that, like, I'm really curious, aside from Madballs, because we can do all sorts of weird and wild things with Need for Speed No Limits. Like, what would you think, what would be a really great integration? It could be a horror movie car. It could be something. Ben, if you had your way, they give us all the money in the world, who would we partner with?
Well, I've got a couple of known ones, and I've got a super deep cut, which would never happen. I would say I'm a big fan of Christine, the Stephen King adaptation, and the book as well. And Christine was, I'm going to just do this off the top of my head, a 1959 Plymouth Fury. I'm also a massive Nightmare on Elm Street fan, and I would love to put the Freddy Cadillac that appeared at the end of the movie, which is a 1958 Cadillac. But my super deep cut is there's an Australian film from the very early 70s directed by Peter Weir called The Cars That Ate Paris. And
the spiky Volkswagen.
So it had a VW Bug that was covered in spikes, which looks ridiculous. But that'd be some of my deep cuts, or like a Rob Zombie Dracula collab. But again, like anything is possible. I'm kind of just leave it at that.
I love that we can kind of just interpret almost anything, into a car. Rebecca, I'm sure you got something crazy and wild. What are you thinking?
Yeah, there is this 1977 movie called The Car. And it is just this amazing horror film. Like, it's so good. And it was billed as like this Jaws on land without it being a monster. And it's just this massive black car that is going through this very kind of rural town, just running people down. And they don't really answer even a lot of questions in it. It's just this massive car. That one is such a deep cut, but one that I would absolutely love to see. I think that definitely, the Rob Zombie crossover makes sense. I would also love to see a classic monster crossover, where we do have kind of those classic universal characters that all are so iconic and have their own kind of aesthetic that goes along with them. Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, the Mummy, Wolfman, every single one of those I feel like would create an amazing skin.
Yeah, I agree. That would be awesome to do a classic universal horror one. That would be awesome. I think it's so funny that you both brought up like Christine or The Car. It's so funny, like back in like the late 70s, there's this whole thing in early 80s with like these possessed cars just driving around, running people down. Possessed cars, that'd be great. Carlos, what do you think? Aside from Madballs, what are you thinking?
And aside from Care Bears too?
Aside from Care Bears, although we have, I think Scare Bears, yeah.
No, I think I'm with Rebecca. I love the idea of like these this classic like monster movies, but I'm gonna take it more like again almost back to the 80s, early 90s with like Nightmare on Elm Street, like with Freddy Krueger. Like almost like if you had like these knives coming out of the cars. I don't know. You guys have so many possibilities in so many fun ways, and I think you have the right team. I think you guys think the right way as far as these things.
I also have to make a mad pitch for Overdrive, which is this amazing movie from, I think it was the late 1970s. I can't even remember when that one came out. But yeah, it's got the Green Goblin truck in it, which is just this massive semi with this Green Goblin face on the front. Very iconic and sacred to horror fans. So that's another one that I just think would be absolutely amazing as a car.
I would say of all those, that one's probably, that would be the toughest now that Marvel is just so huge. Like, probably, 20 years ago, easy, but now, it's just too big.
But I think in that movie, everything came to life. So we might be able to make it work.
That one was like that. The whole concept was that like aliens attacked, but they took over cars. This goes back to you're in the late 1970s, everything became possessed. And so cars and all machines started trying to take over humanity. But that one truck with the face definitely became kind of the icon of the movie. But there was actually a subgenre in the mid to late 1970s of car-sploitation, where it became all about kind of exploiting cars. And a lot of them were race movies, but a lot of them classified as horror as well, where the car actually became the horror element in a way. Oh, yeah. Christine definitely fell into that.
I think my dream is to put Stephen King as a character in Need for Speed No Limits. So if I jump on Twitter and hassle him enough, who knows? Stranger things have happened. But
Yeah, I actually Stephen King themed cars, like having an It car, having a Pet Cemetery car. That's such a massive universe, and there's so much great content there.
yeah, and we could call it the King of the Road update. And,
Oh man, there you go.
nicely.
I want the Shining car. Just spills blood everywhere it goes.
And you just have the twins in the front seat
constantly driving.
And then he's from Bangor, Maine, so we can have like the main event. Can be the marquee event. Yeah, what?
Yes.
Amazing. I love a good pun. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. I think for me, I would love to see the Ecto 1 in game. I know it's not necessarily horror, but it's got that Halloween vibe and stuff. I'm a huge 84 Ghostbusters fan. And then I'd also like to see the Oldsmobile Delta 88 from the Evil Dead series. It's just a junky car.
That's awesome.
I mean, so good. But look, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. This was great. I think, giving that history of Madballs and the integration, fans are playing the event right now. They're going to be able to pre-order Trash and Pumpkin as a character from Megalopolis Toys. Just like so good. Any final thoughts, Carlos? Final thoughts?
No, yeah. Check out the collaboration. Follow Madballs on Instagram and YouTube, and to check out more, because there's going to be more to come for this stuff. We're excited.
Awesome. Rebecca, final thoughts.
I'm glad to see Madballs still kicking and still grossing people out after, several decades. It's refreshing to see it, still being a huge part of the pop culture language. And it's Halloween, so go watch a whole bunch of horror movies, y'all.
And Ben, anything final to add?
Yeah, I just hope players really enjoy it and let us know their thoughts on it. And also, if people want to, reach out and suggest, future Halloween collabs, they're also more than welcome to on our social channels. So,
yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to see what we come up with next year, because we don't know yet. Won't be something interesting, I'm sure. So everyone, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the starting line.